to the How Could You podcast. I'm Lauren Tocci, here with Ryan Tocci, my co-host.
I know you are, but what am I?
I know you are, but what am I?
I know you are, but what am I?
Well, if this is your first time listening to us for the How Could You podcast, where we fill big gaps in our film knowledge, we are two people who met at a movie theater and never quite left.
Welcome back, Lauren. We went away from our normal format.
We did.
And now we're back here ready to fill up another gap in our knowledge.
You know, and honestly, I feel like there was more scrutiny over whether Nightmare Before Christmas is a Halloween or a Christmas movie than when I said I hadn't seen The Goonies.
That's true. That did get a lot of feedback. It had a lot of good discussion.
A lot of great discussion, and I don't feel like it's been settled. I don't think anyone's satisfied with your, wishy-washy answer of, just watch it in November. I feel like people feel still pretty divided.
I'm still going with March 11th.
I'm glad you remembered the random date that you said. Because
I'm actually really hoping. Since the show tonight has been probably the one we've been most nervous about since we've changed shows about 3 or 4 different times of what movie we were going to be doing for it.
Which really only exposes how many gaps in our film knowledge that we have, that we were we've got this menu of options.
Well, we were trying to do that whole, kind of find something that fits with the time. And since a lot of you are watching or listening to this on election day, we were trying to, go with that. So hopefully all of you have voted or going to vote.
Vote, please.
And if you haven't, how could you not have voted?
Oh, I loved that so much.
But that's all the politics you're getting here today, folks. We wanted to keep it light, so we decided not to go with JFK. We decided not to go with Nixon. We decided not to go with all the president's men.
Which are 3 gaps in our film knowledge. I'm not going to tell you which one is for which of us.
Yes.
But we have some presidential gaps in our film knowledge that at some point we'll take care of.
We went with something everybody can get behind, something that's easygoing, fun, to bring some levity to the world that we are dealing with. Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yep, 1985, Tim Burton, Danny Elfman, first team up ever, and that is what we're covering as one of our gaps in our film knowledge today.
I am completely pumped for this.
I know you are.
Despite the fact that we are doing this on a very quick schedule and turnarounds. So.
We are not recording this the night before it comes out.
So, you guys may not get the best editing on this one. We are just kind of winging it. But you know what? It's Peewee. Who cannot just sit here and talk for an hour about Peewee?
Well, and honestly, isn't it better with Peewee not to do a whole lot of preparation? To just have to let it flow organically and magic.
There are so many jokes. Not even gonna touch right now. Anyway, we're gonna try to stay away from all the, 90s jokes that were made.
You leave Paul Reubens alone. He made a mistake.
So, we, yes.
Movies, let's talk about movies.
August 1985. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Tim Burton. It was a PG film.
I think as it should be.
You're right, completely. When you watch it, it does. But I think going back to some of the films we've done so far in that 80s time range and the PG, and we came out going, that didn't deserve a PG rating.
For example, being a first-year teacher, letting your kids pick what movie they're going to watch as a reward and say it has to be PG or G, and they pick Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and you go, wow, a lot of things got into a PG movie back in the 80s.
But yeah, you're right. It completely deserves a PG rating. And, it depends on which way you come into the Pee Wee Herman aspect of this, on why that, could be either surprising or make a lot of sense. So if you're really only aware of the show, which we'll talk about, I'm sure at some point today, then yeah, it makes sense. It was a kids' TV show. But if you start talking about the origins of, the Pee Wee Herman character, that's when you start getting to be a little more surprised maybe that it was a PG film. And
it has a pretty interesting, long journey as to how we get Pee-wee in the version in which we know it.
Right. It's a really interesting story with that. So it was started in the 70s. Paul Reubens, who, if you don't know, Pee Wee Herman is Paul Reubens.
No, Pee Wee Herman is Pee Wee Herman.
Well,
don't shatter the glass.
That's a funny thing you say that right off the bat, because it's like, you know, that's one of those personalities of, you know, trying to figure out who, you know, he is Paul Reubens, but he's so known as Pee Wee Herman, to the point where his Hollywood Walk of Fame star says Pee Wee Herman. It doesn't say
really?
Paul Reubens. Yeah. So
I have to wonder, does that sting or does that mean job well done?
I'm going to go job well done.
Yeah, like you have to like take compliment for that the character itself is so iconic that's what gets recognized.
Yeah, exactly. I think if any of us in this world can create one thing that's everlasting and has, you know, such an impact, I mean, you can't, I mean, that's a success. And he's been riding that success. And this is completely his baby, more or less. So he started out with the comedy group in Los Angeles, the Groundlings.
Which has birthed, like, every iconic comedian you can think of from, you know, the 80s on. I mean, the Groundlings was, you know, like, you know, Upright Citizens Brigade, like, all of those kind of troops. And the Groundlings definitely up very much in that conversation. I mean,
right off the bat, you know, you're coming out of a prime, you know, comedic location or group. So he ends up befriending Phil Hartman. So we all know who Phil Hartman is, news radio, SNL, you know, just an iconic comedic character of the 90s that we would know him mostly from. And I was really shocked to find out. I didn't realize how much influence Phil Hartman had until we were researching this show, how much influence he had on the Pee Wee Herman character.
Well, and I had no idea that they wrote the screenplay together.
Right.
Until we were doing research for this, I had no idea he was involved.
They created the character essentially together. I mean, it's Paul Reubens' baby. I mean, let's just put that out there. But they, working together with the Groundlings, started actually putting together this character. And then the big moment for this character came in 1977. The Groundlings were doing a performance, and they had to do it about a comedian that's like a failed comedian type thing. And Paul Reubens goes up there, and I guess he was known for not remembering punchlines. Like,
that's kind of great.
So, like, that was his whole bit, was trying to have a comedian that you knew would never make it. And so the whole purpose of that joke was because he always forgot, you know, these punchlines. And so that night in 77, it was at a comedy club. He went up and he did the iconic laugh. And he did the, I know you are, but what am I?
Fantastic.
And that was the night that Pee Wee Herman was essentially officially created. Like,
can you imagine being in those like art spaces? And I think this oftentimes when you hear about like how many like comedians will come out of these like enclaves of like artists like at a particular moment in time, and I always think, I'm like, can you imagine being in the room where it happened, not to quote Hamilton.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But, like, even something like, all right, so, like, Freestyle Love Supreme. You know, Lin-Manuel Miranda, you know, these, you know, improv shows that he did with essentially what ends up becoming, like, most of the cast of Hamilton. And I think, like,
Some of that poor guy that didn't get to be Burr.
No, that one guy. You gotta feel bad for him. Which, highly recommend watching that documentary if you're a Hamilton fan or just a Lin-Manuel Miranda fan or a fan of, you know, just improv.
Art,
yeah. It's called We Are Free, Style Love Supreme, and it's on Hulu. But I remember when we were watching that, and now you telling the story about Paul Reubens and the Groundlings, like, I wonder if you're in the audience as just someone there to appreciate the art. Like, do you know how special the moment is? You know, like, do you kind of get that tinge of going, like, I feel like I just watched something happen? Kind of like, you know, I would say almost like the cliche moment, like, in a movie where, like, the manager finds, like, the, like, unknown star. Right. Like, I almost, like, do you feel that? I wonder in that audience. The background
music starts playing for you and everything. I think to some degree you probably do. You know, I mean, any person that I think that has grown up with, like, a, you know, an area band that ends up going on and doing really well, or you see them in some dinky club and then they go on and they end up being this huge hit and you're following through that whole time, I think you do, right? Like,
that's
I think you get that
special
moment. I mean, how many times do you always hear those old stories of, you know, parents and grandparents talking about how they saw the Beatles here, or they saw, you know, I think, was it your grandfather?
My grandfather saw Frank Sinatra perform in Hoboken, New Jersey for like $1.
Right, yeah. So, like, I mean, but you know it. Like, I think you do to some degree. I'm not saying every single situation. I'm not saying everybody in that audience that night was like, oh, this is going to be this huge hit.
Pee Wee Herman is going to be the greatest thing ever.
All right, we don't have to throw pens.
I'm really sorry, audience. I just threw a pen. I didn't mean to. If you know me, though, you know I gesticulate wildly with my hands, so it shouldn't be that surprising.
So, Peewee, he ends up taking the name actually from a miniature harmonica that I guess he was like a big fan of as a kid.
It's really funny.
And a friend of his as a kid that he took the surname from. And that's how he combined it. And he said that he thought it was a good name because he thought it was a name that he could envision parents giving to a kid, but parents that didn't really care about the kid.
I'm so glad I waited until you were done with your sentence because I'd be like, oh my gosh, if we have a kid, we should name him Peewee.
Yeah, but I don't know. Because of some of the things we've already touched upon at the beginning of this show, I don't think that's the name we want to go.
You said touched upon. Anyways.
Family-friendly
podcast.
So, all right. So then what happens is he actually ends up moving this character. And actually, I don't know much more than just he was on the dating game like 3 or 4 times.
Was, yeah.
I know nothing about the dating game. I just assumed it was like a, 3 guys come out, a girl picks a thing. So did he go as the character?
Yes, he did.
Like to try to actually win the date?
Yes. He went as the character, the deep fake, and was like, he was Pee Wee Herman trying to get a date.
These old episodes.
Honestly, if anyone has the link to them, please send them to us.
Oh my gosh, because that's fantastic.
I read that and I was like...
And horrible, really? Right? Like, I mean...
Or fantastic.
Until you're the one that picks... Oh, I guess there's no way they were picking him.
Yeah, there's probably no way you're picking Pee Wee Herman. But, like, at the same time, like, it's just, like, such a great way of doing this because, like, you think about, like, how people invest in, like, dating shows. I'm thinking about, like, if someone pulled that now with The Bachelor,
right.
like, and was just testing out a character from their, like, theater improv troupe, how fantastic that would be.
So, through the course, then he kind of, keeps honing this character, and it's evolving as any type of character does, any type of bit goes, and he keeps moving that character forward. You start getting the iconic look with him. Mm-hmm. You start getting the different mannerisms with him. His background was kind of left ambiguous in the beginning, and, just through all of the different shows and things, it keeps getting more and building.
So like the mythology built,
yes,
like with the character.
Yeah, but then this is when so Paul Reubens actually tries out for Saturday Night Live in the early 80s, 1980, and doesn't get it.
That always makes me sad when you hear like actors talk about them not getting on SNL.
Well, it's funny when you have different characters or different actors that you hear that you're like, oh, they're such a good comedic actor, but they didn't make it onto the show completely. And it is interesting because then obviously, as we know, Phil Hartman goes on to be such a mainstay on Saturday Night Live. But so his character actually gets its first like appearance in Cheech and Chong's next movie in 1980. So much so, I've never seen any of the Cheech and Chong films before. I don't believe you ever have either.
No, I've seen clips, and from a pop culture knowledge, I know enough, but...
I actually had to get you to look this up, just to make sure that we weren't misreading this, because I was surprised. I had not heard this before, so... but he ends up appearing in that film, and then after that... this is when he really takes off. He actually takes that character and does a stage show. And this is kind of the funny thing with this character of where we started this at, was that character in the stage show there was a lot more sexual innuendos. It was a lot more adult. Like, think Pee-wee's Playhouse, but in an adult version of it.
But like if HBO did a reboot.
Well, it's funny you say that, because that's actually who aired that special.
Oh, fantastic.
So it was at the Roxy Theater, September 11th, 1981. They showed that show. So that starts to be this notoriety for Peewee. Then he starts making these appearances on the David Letterman show. David Letterman has him repeatedly coming back, and he has one of those reoccurring characters. And that's where Paul Reubens says that Peewee became a star. The stage show with HBO made him famous. Letterman made him a star. And he starts to take off, and then after all the Letterman appearances, he starts selling out. He does a huge sold-out show at Carnegie Hall. Just kind of makes me have the Andy Kaufman of it all, right?
I was immediately going to say that, like, you hear Carnegie Hall and, like, communities, it's like, oh, it's that Andy Kaufman thing, and you think about, like, the type of character that Pee Wee Herman is, like, it definitely, like, fits within that league.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of that's your background to Pee-wee and how we get to Tim Burton's Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Sorta.
Sort of.
So again, this character was made to be a late night comedy club character. Like, it was meant to be this more adult kind of goofy version of comedy, like taking a kid's show and making it for adults.
Well, and what I love about that, like, immediately with the history of that is because you so can see how that juxtaposition works. Because all of the whimsy and all of, like, the fantasy, like, or the fantastical elements, I should say, of, like, Pee Wee Herman, like, that juxtaposed against someone who's telling really raunchy jokes works so well because it's so disarming. Because you don't know if you should be offended by the fact that it's coming out of someone who's doing a character like that, or if it's the funniest thing you're ever going to see, because it shouldn't come out of your mouth. It's like when a kid says a curse word. You kind of want to laugh at first because it's like, it's so not right, but there's something so funny about how not right it is.
Yes, completely. So Phil Hartman is still kind of attached with Paul Reubens. They're still writing. Warner Brothers brings Paul Reubens in, and they want him to do a film. So he's working on essentially a retelling of Pollyanna with Pee Wee Herman.
I'm just picturing Pee Wee Herman with the wig now.
So that's his plan. He's writing this. It's getting a little bit more. And then what happens is he starts seeing everybody riding on bikes at Warner Brothers and starts asking about it. And they're like, oh, and they end up giving him a Schwinn bike, like, so he could ride it around. Well, that gives him this whole new kind of way that he wants to write this script. And he completely throws out the original script that he has and they start rewriting with Phil Hartman and I believe Mike Vogt. He never did a lot more than the Pee-wee stuff. So they start working on this. It's essentially supposed to be a loose retelling of the Italian film The Bicycle Thief.
Which, I'm going to say, for a loose retelling, please understand, if you've not experienced The Bicycle Thief, or it's The Bicycle Thieves in Italian, The Bicycle Thief in the American translation, it is not a happy movie. It is a very depressing movie.
So we have a very big departure.
Yes, it is. It's genius. It's brilliant. It's considered by many the best film of all time. However, it is not the same in tone at all to what Pee-wee's Big Adventure is.
So then we get a very young, first-time major film director, Tim Burton, who you've heard a couple times on this show already, takes over this project.
And this is hot off of him doing Frankenweenie, the short film, and Invictor, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so he had done those, and that's how he kind of got, like, the attention.
So they start working on this. They released the film August 9th, 1985, to mixed reviews. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But it did really well. Like, that was the thing. Despite the reviews, it did very well. So, basically, it got a cult following. It got much like we've talked about with Tim Burton, it gets this following of cult fans, but people that love it. It's taken down to be more of a kid's film, but adults could enjoy it because there's a little bit of that in there. And you get this film that is, now stood the test of time as we are here. And you get this just fantastic film that everybody that loves film should have seen. Which makes me to the big question here. Lauren Tocci, how could you not have seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
Hold on, I'm going to turn this around on you. Ryan Tocci, how could you have not put this in your top 5 Tim Burton films when we talked about The Nightmare Before Christmas?
Yeah.
That one's for you, Marlo.
Yes. You had a friend that had pointed out that I had completely forgotten this film.
And I totally dodged. I was like, yeah, how dare he? Totally dodging. Then I'm like, I have only recently seen this movie, and I am not telling her that.
I absolutely love this movie. It is, I forget it's a Burton film.
Well, and here's the thing. It's easy to forget it's a Burton film insofar as the part of it that you think of most is the character of Peewee. And because, although there are a lot of like very specific like director trademarks from Tim Burton, including his phenomenal cameo.
Oh my God, right?
As the guy who almost like beats Peewee up before he goes to see the fortune teller. It has some
hisses at him.
Yes. It's just great. But I think it doesn't have like all of like kind of the production design in the tonally dark way that we expect from Tim Burton.
Right.
Like it's his and I'm sure we're going to talk about the production design with this, but I think it's like so you forget it. And then it's like, and it's so great because this first pairing, you know, with Danny Elfman, you know, essentially, and I mean, I'm sure many of you know the story. Tim Burton, you know, was at an Oingo Boingo concert, which was Danny Elfman's band, and
I believe he was with Paul Reubens. Am I
he
mistaken?
was with Paul Reubens.
Okay, yeah.
And he approached Danny Elfman and was like, I think you should do this. And Danny Elfman was like, I have no training in writing a film score. And Tim Burton's like, yeah, but I think you could. And the weirdest...
I think it's worked out for him.
It's worked out for him so well. And I'm just like, man... A friend believing in you can be all the difference in the world because this guy had no intentions of doing this. And that score is so, so important. And he pulls like elements from like Bernard Herrmann's score from Psycho, you know, and pulls all of these influences, but then pulls influences, but so uniquely makes his immediate signature style of composing.
And not to jump too far ahead in the film, but then the bicycle chase, that's pulling from Wizard of Oz, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. No, the influences are supposed to be and there's a part when the bicycle is first stolen from him, that's supposed to pull from the Psycho score. But to answer your question, okay, so no, I did not see this as a youth. I remember the TV show.
Yes.
I remember the big chair. I remember Pee-wee's Playhouse. So I remember that very well. And then, like, when I was old enough to understand certain varieties of jokes about Paul Reubens, I knew that. But I just never gone back and watched the film. And I don't think for any, like, big particular reason. But the thing is like, I felt compelled to watch it. And only recently, because you always talk about it so fondly and with like total childlike glee, which is, I think, exactly how you should approach this film. But it was just not one of those movies that I had seen. I never really attached onto it. But it's weird, is I can remember a lot about the TV show, so it's kind of funny that I never watched the film.
The show is awesome.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm totally with you. Like, I'm glad that you have that, you know, memory with the show as well and have such a fondness for it.
The secret word is podcast.
Yeah, yes. We definitely should have started that at the beginning. I actually had a talking Pee Wee Herman doll.
Of course you did.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know, like 2-3 foot tall, and you pull it, and it just gave all the best lines. He had the whole. I love that doll.
That's so fun.
But so I'm totally with you. The TV show to me was everything for a long time.
Yeah, because I remember like it was really funny. And now, granted, I would have been watching this in like syndication, so certainly not during its first run, because the movie came out before I was alive. But so I attach very much to that, but it's really interesting having grown up with in some variety, like the TV show, to then go back and watch the movie, because I feel like more of what you are kind of talking about with like, there's meant to be this adult humor, I feel like comes through a lot more in the film, and maybe because I'm watching as an adult.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot now you can get a lot more accessible to getting that original show and watching it to see all of that. And the show loosely put that stuff in there, you know, very loosely, obviously. But there were aspects of it. Like, you see it, like, you get it, but...
Yeah.
So, all right, you now have seen the movie.
Yes.
So you actually saw it for the first time last year.
Yes,
so,
a year ago.
Okay.
Yep.
I need to know right off the bat, because this is a very unique character. It's a very unique type of film. So now I know you had you had this nostalgia of the TV show, but having seen the film as an adult, I need to know, what are your thoughts? Like, does it hold up, and what are your thoughts?
So I have many thoughts, and I have questions for you too, but this is what I'll immediately say. First off, I think the opening scene of him getting ready in the morning is what most people think I look like when I'm getting ready in the morning. Like, I imagine if people like try to imagine me get ready in the morning, that's what they're kind of picturing in their head.
Him eating that breakfast, 100% you. 100% you. I will show you the note on that. Like, that is how you make your breakfast. Like, I feel like, you put the smiley face on it, you talk to it.
If you get me with
completely sugar.
Yes, if you get me with a Mickey waffle, like, I will make that thing talk in a Mickey Mouse voice. And I, for the longest time as a youth, ate my pancakes not with syrup, but with butter and sugar, like packets. And I don't know why, because essentially and I remember, like, my family used to say, like, that's what syrup is. And I'm like, no, I have to have straight up, like, just sugar, granulated sugar on my pancakes.
That's a whole different type of How Could You podcast that we're not going to get into.
But here's the thing.
Hold on, though. I have to ask, though. We're talking about the breakfast.
Yeah.
We need to bring back Mr. T cereal.
We totally need to bring back Mr. T cereal. Honestly.
I pity the fool who doesn't bring back Mr. T cereal.
And given the fact that you still own a box of Flutie Flakes, I am shocked we don't have a box of
Flutie's cereal is everything, okay? I'm sure that thing's just powder in there at this point.
Every move it makes when we change apartments, I just think this is the time it disintegrates.
But Mr. T cereal is literally just teas.
Yes, I know, it's so genius. And I love that it was real, because I would have assumed that it didn't exist, but the fact that it was real. But, so going back to your original question, yes, I love this.
Yeah.
I obviously, like, so the Pee Wee Herman character, what I love about him is, like, there are times where I find him very disturbing and kind of at times irritating, because we will get into his relationship with Dottie, and I have some very harsh notes.
He's not real great.
He's not real great with Dottie,
Dottie.
and I love Dottie. But, like, I don't know, I just feel like I get the character of Pee Wee Herman. He makes a lot of sense to me, and I don't know what that says about me as a person, but I'm just like, I totally get this dude. I desperately, like, and I think this comes down to production design, and my, like, love affair with this character really comes down to that one scene in his house, because I love all of the intentionality of, like, how playful the house is. Every holiday is decorated for. If ever I could find the, like, nightlight he has by his bed, that it's the moon and then it flips over and it's like the ship on the inside. Like, there's not one aspect of that home that I'm not like, that is my ideal home situation.
It's definitely home goals.
Yes,
like,
it really
especially
is.
for us.
Yeah, especially for us. And if you see our home, you're probably like, guys, you ain't that far off.
I'm glad you talk about that scene, because I really love that scene, because, and this is a real credit to Burton, he sits in that scene for a long time.
Yeah.
It really has no bearing on the entire film.
No.
With any of it, except for, Pee Wee Herman. This wild, eccentric character, all from that whole entire scene. And I'm glad that he allows it to marinate and take as long as it does, because it's fun, it brings you into the film, it lets you know who Peewee is to some degree.
Well, but honestly, what I love about that and everything you just said is, like, pretty much what I wrote down. Like, you get to know him so beautifully, so instantaneously, because of all of the set dressing around him. You have all the Rube Goldberg machines, you have, like, just the way it's decorated, the colors, how he is in his home space. And I think that's so important. So that way, when he goes on this, like, his big adventure, when you see him, like, transposed in other places that are not his home space, you really get a sense of, like, how the world interacts with him. But what I also love, and I'm sure we'll talk about, is, like, that he isn't met with any, like, kind of, like, side-eyed, this dude's super weird. Like, it's just, like, he's so accepted in his, like, town and then in his home space, and he's just Peewee. And I'm like, I just love that. And I think that's the most Burton part of the movie, is that home.
And that's what's fun about it. I agree with you. He's a cartoon character in a real world. Like,
and he gets to be a cartoon character at one point.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that they definitely go, and there's a lot of non-reality type moments throughout the film, but for the most part, everybody else is played fairly straight, and then you just have this really wild character in the middle of it.
Well, and I love, too, because he's not just, I mean, he's got, like, there's dimensions there. I mean, for the most part, like, he's very, and to use the word, like, he's whimsical. Like, he kind of, looks at the world in a very particular way. Like, it's all about fun and all about play and all about, kind of like color and vibrancy. But I also love that he is like a dude who gets very angry about things and very particular about like how people should interact then with his world. And like that whole opening scene, like in his home space, like it's such a brilliant mark of like where Tim Burton certainly was going to go with his career. That, I don't know, there's something about it, like it all is so fantastical, but also feels like very real at the same time, which I think is such a weird balance to strike. And it's so believable, and it doesn't feel absurd. Like, it just feels like this is Pee-wee's world. Of course it is.
But that's such a credit too, though, to Paul Reubens, right? I mean, he perfected this character.
Yes.
The mannerisms, from everything from the outfit, but his mannerisms, the way he walks, the way that he runs, to obviously this very noticeable voice, and every aspect of it is just, it doesn't feel like Paul Reubens makes it real. And I think that's the beauty of that character. It doesn't feel like, again, Paul Reubens playing Pee Wee Herman. He becomes Pee Wee Herman. He became his own individual person that even outside of the film, we know him as Peewee more than we know him as Paul Reubens. And I think that's such a credit to him.
No, for sure.
And it makes the believability of this really eccentric film believable.
Yes, and because I think it's all like rooted, like there's, and I know you and I can talk a lot about this because we're sensitive, ushy-gushy people, but there's like a lot of heart to the movie too, because I feel like the way people around him react to him is they don't make him feel outside and strange. They look at him.
Everybody loves him.
They look at him
even
the way
Francis, you could kind of argue, envies and loves him.
Okay, I don't even
likes him.
I'm going to say very harsh things about Francis too. Like, but you're right. There is such that like germ of, you understand that like at the root of what Francis does is really like he wants to be like Peewee, and I just love that like Tim Burton had, and Paul Reubens and Phil Hartman, like that they had the intention of saying like, this is a character that the world, in a world that could deal with him cynically, is going to deal with him earnestly. And I really love that, because then what you have in equal measure in this film is the fantastical and the absurd and very much reality. Like, and I feel like those things being put in equal footing and done with equal measure is what makes this movie so special, and what makes it like stand up in a way where I didn't feel rewatching it that it felt like particularly dated. Like, yes, like references and such, but it didn't feel old.
My gosh, right?
It didn't
For
feel...
a film in 1985, I kept taking note of that again, rewatching it and going, no, this film does not feel outdated at all.
Good filmmaker, great practical effects.
Yeah, like
awesome settings.
The way that it visually just plays on the screen is fantastic. I agree with you. Like, yeah, there's some outdated aspects of it.
References.
You can't ever get away from that to some degree, but it holds up completely from a visual standpoint and just the way that it's all shown to you. So, which again is another Tim Burton, credit. Which I think is just the beauty of the Tim Burton. It's just so interesting with him being that this was his first film. Even though you have that couple of scary moments, like it's one of his more brighter, happier films.
Yeah, it kind of almost forecasts like what he'll be able to do with Big Fish later on.
I would agree with you. If you're going to take a Tim Burton double feature...
Was that literally the thing you were about to say about Big Fish?
No, I wasn't. But you're completely right. Like, they pair very well. Mm-hmm. Like, you see... Those two, and you're talking about Tim Burton, you're going to put two films together. Those two work together very much.
Oh my gosh, the protagonists are the same. Oh gosh, I feel like I want to do a deep dive now on like looking at like Pee-wee's Big Adventure and then looking at Big Fish.
There's a little more seriousness, a little more grounded aspects to Big Fish.
For sure.
But, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, there's never any point do you feel any type of real drama in it. Like, all the drama is played for a lot of fun.
Yeah, because it's a very much like that, like kind of great epic journey story, but like the stakes always feel like very much mitigated by the fact it's a bike and like Pee-wee's okay and everyone's really nice to Pee-wee along in the journey. They all just kind of, except Francis, they all just kind of want to help him. Even the guy who like Francis has lift the bike seems like kind of okay as a human being. Like, and it's, I think there's so much of that. It's like, no, right, comparatively speaking to like Big Fish, it's definitely something that's a lot lighter.
Right, Big Fish is based around father dying.
Yeah, so it's a little heavier.
We can't get away from, the seriousness of that part of it, but
the Burton of this all, like, I think there's so many moments, too. It's like you can kind of, like, look at his later films and go, like, where he was definitely testing his chops. Like, I love how the sequence when they're sitting up in the dinosaur is shot. That is so beautiful. I want a print of that. Like, it was gorgeous. I was just like,
I always wanted to go visit those dinosaurs.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if they're real. Because
yes, they are real.
They are, right? Are they the same ones that are in The Wizard?
I don't know that, but I will tell you they are a real roadside attraction because this is Tim Burton actually, before he became a filmmaker, knew he wanted to do something with those dinosaurs.
Oh, nice.
So that's how they end up.
I love that he doesn't just goes right away. Like,
yeah.
I might have one shot at it.
I only have one movie. And that's what, and like, then like dinosaurs are like such like a motif throughout the film because like, I mean, aren't dinosaurs like such a part of like play as a child? Like, something that's like so disconnected from your own reality, but like this thing that like we all at some point in our life, I think, get kind of attached to as part of like our imagination. And then that plays throughout the movie with like how many times there are references to dinosaurs throughout. So it's a really cool thing that he does, but I just love that shot. I love the coloring there. And it's another one of those like moments in his journey. And I think that's the other thing, like things that even feel dangerous in his journey are like so innocent because like probably my favorite person he meets on the road is I Love Mickey. Like I love that whole sequence. I just think it's great.
I love the fact that it plays off that urban legend of, the cutting the tag off of a mattress. Because, I mean, that was the thing that we always, I don't know where that really came from. I'm sure that there was something.
I'm sure there's
that
some
it was grounded
reason.
In some type of, but that whole interaction is fantastic. And I love that Peewee knows right away that he's a criminal and it just doesn't really care.
But isn't that just, again, what Burton does so beautifully? And like, and bring this back to, because obviously this is Paul Reubens' creation, but just like the idea of like how Peewee interacts with the world is I think why people meet him with such kindness, because he like puts out like what he gets in return. Like he puts out a lot of kindness and love into the world and like helpfulness and like, desire to kind of like be good. And I think then he kind of, people respond in kind. It's actually like a really like beautiful like kind of story and way and lesson to like teach to children.
So Peewee puts out kindness, happiness. Character that may not. Francis Buxton.
I hate Francis so much. I got visibly angry every time he came on the screen. He is sniveling and grotesque and annoying, and I don't wish violence on people, but I found myself wishing violence on him throughout the movie. He is the living worst.
I mean, there's no redeeming quality to Francis.
He is awful. And like, if this was an episode about the adult version of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I would be certainly using some adult language to talk about Francis, because I just find he's the only like viciously unlikable part of the movie.
Francis is played by Mark Holton. Do you remember another annoying character that Mark Holton played?
Oh my gosh, is he Stewell, like the grown-up version of Stewell Angel, come here to mommy. So it's from, if you don't know, it's from A League of Their Own. I'm sorry for like that vicious like impersonation. But oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, but he's kind of sweet when he's grown up in A League of Their Own.
And I always loved him. He was in the Teen Wolf movies. He played one of Scott Howard's basketball teammates.
Oh my gosh.
And then, I'm going to say it, I'm one of the few people that like Teen Wolf 2.
T-O-O.
T-O-O. He plays in that too. He plays one of the, he plays one of the boxers at the school in that film.
I didn't realize we were going to have this much backstory with Francis, although I feel like now knowing that he's, the kid from A League of Their Own, it makes me a little softer about it, or the grown-up version of the kid from A League of Their Own.
He is terrible, even though I want his bathtub, and I would, even now, as an adult, want my giant, aircraft carriers.
I know. It's like, I was like, oh, that's a really great way to take a bath. Good on you, Francis. Good on you.
He also played Ozzy in the Leprechaun films, for those who are horror movie fans.
Like Ozzy Osbourne? He played Ozzy Osbourne? Sorry, you said Ozzy and that's all I heard in my head. I was like, wait a second, that doesn't seem right. I don't remember that in the Leprechaun movies.
So another main character in here we need to talk about is Dottie.
I love her. I love Dottie so much. I love her dress at the end. She is so sweet. She is so endearing. And, like, in the moments when Peewee is, like, total trash to her, she's still just, like, very nice. And she so does not deserve his sass.
Okay, so he does give her a lot of sass.
A lot of sass.
But are we not to play that Peewee kind of has a childlike way about him, and I think that he's kind of doing the ew, girls are gross type of, old school...
Yes, I think their chemistry is played for the fact that it's a little bit of he's like unwilling because he thinks like, dating's gross or he doesn't really have time for it. He's more concerned with his bike. And I think it's also because like, it's meant to be like a kid's movie, so it's not about like the romantic interest. But even if you just take it from like a friendship standpoint, he's still kind of mean to her.
He is kind of mean. I can't argue with that.
I don't
Dottie
love it.
is so wonderful to him.
Pure goodness.
Pure goodness. Evidently, the greatest bike... fixer?
Greatest bike fixer in the land.
That is a real job title, right?
I want that job title. And fun fact, she was on the TV show Friends. Do you remember who she played on the TV show Friends?
I do. She was Phoebe's ex-partner.
Yes, so the famous Smelly Cat episode.
She was Elizabeth Daly. I remember her from, she plays in the, she sings in the dance scene in Better Off Dead. I was always like, why is this main character from Peewee just have this bit singing part in this? So I'm guessing she was a real singer because
she was.
The whole Phoebe,
Yes.
And now she's in the whole Rob Zombie verse, and she seems to pop up in those films. She did a lot of voice work, like she was the Powerpuff Girls. I don't remember.
Buttercup. She's Buttercup.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I love Dottie in this movie.
Yeah,
She's
Dottie's
so
great.
She's so sweet to Peewee.
We have another character we have to talk about, but just because it's a fun fact. So the dog Speck, do you know what other movie the dog Speck was in?
I don't.
The dog Speck is Queenie in The Burbs.
Oh my gosh! Finds the femur!
Hold, I'll do you one better. And is Precious in Silence of the Lambs.
Oh my god! Really? I thought Precious was like a poodle.
No, well, so you have to remember that Speck is painted in this.
Yeah.
So the dog's real name is Darla.
Oh my God.
Believe, if I'm not mistaken, Peewee is the first movie that Darla was in and then was in.
I gotta be honest with you, the dog might be the most famous actor in the entire
it might
film.
be.
That's awesome. That is such a great fact. All right, so let's start talking about favorite scenes. Do you have one?
I have so many. So, okay, I'm going to narrow it down to 3. Is that okay? Is that fair? Okay, so my 3 favorite scenes are, well, obviously I've already...
down to 3?
Yes, I narrowed it down to 3.
Oh, I'm good with that, yeah.
So obviously I've already talked about the opening breakfast sequence and why I love that so much, because it speaks to how I want my mornings to start every day. And then additionally, I absolutely love the movie within the movie with PW and... Pee-wee's Great Adventure, or Pee-wee's Big Adventure turned into like a spy thriller romance. Like, I just love it so much because...
Paging Mr. Herman. Paging Mr. Pee Wee Herman.
And it's like, I love that they give him like a cameo. And I just love it because I feel like it's like such a like fun commentary on the film industry that the thought would be, no, this story would never sell with this like earnest, like childlike guy going on a search for his bike. No, the only way people would see this is if it's like a sexed up thriller version of that story. And I'm like, that's so accurate to Hollywood.
Again, Paul Reubens playing Pee Wee Herman, playing this character is so good in that entire scene of just this awkwardness. I love it. The Simpsons steal that whole thing later on. There was a whole episode about Bart being with the mob, and then they make a movie about him, but then they completely change it so much that Neil Patrick Harris plays Bart in the movie, but they're like, they changed it just enough that they didn't have to pay us any money.
Oh, that's fantastic. But yeah, I just love that sequence. Well, I mean, I love the whole scene. Like them like him promenading at like the drive-in and getting to see the characters. I love that ending,
that you bring everybody back. That's really cool. Yeah, so
I would say like definitely that. And then my third is, and I mean, I think this is a fan favorite for a lot of people, the Large Marge scene. Like, that claymation is so outstanding. And then the reveal.
That's the scene. That's the most iconic scene in the entire film. Yeah, you're right. And it's so terrifying as a kid. Like, you're seeing it as an adult.
I'm still pretty creeped out, man.
I was gonna say, it holds up being creepy. And I love, yes, you're right. That's like such this great Burton moment of using the claymation to make this very terrifying character.
Yeah. And it feels like so like interestingly plopped into the sequence, but it's like also that part of like the journey and like him. The other part I'll say I really love, oh gosh, now I'm going to say a bonus fourth scene. Please don't be mad at me.
No, let's talk about it.
I love the whole like sequence of him like driving around or riding around the Warner Brothers backlot.
And the bike chase scene, right?
The bike chase scene.
Yeah, I mean, that is...
my gosh.
That payoff to the entire movie is fantastic because you're building up to him get this bike back.
Yes.
And then you get to see the bike in all its glory. You know, you're getting all the Hollywood aspects of it, this great chase scene. You get to see why he loves this bike so much because you see all the aspects of the bike.
Everything the bike can do,
everything the bike can do. No, I agree with you completely. That is an awesome scene.
Well, and I think sometimes, like, I always get, like, really excited, and I know you probably do, too, when, like, because we got to tour the Warner Brothers studios when we were, like, out vacationing in Los Angeles, and, like, and the fun thing about that is, like, once you've been on those sets and those lots and by those sound stages, you start recognizing them in things because like Anytown USA, you start like picking up like other places it's been used, and it's been used like very frequently throughout film and television. And I just love like that they let this really big cinematic moment happen so meta on these backlots. Like it's so fantastic. And then to end with this like hyper meta moment of like him having his own movie. It's all so genius because if you had asked me at the beginning of the movie the first time I saw this, where is this going to end? That's never what I would have predicted.
I mean, it takes so many sharp turns.
Yes.
Like, but that's also too, because like that's why when you can sit here and go, oh, I got 4 or 5 different favorite scenes, I get it, because every scene's almost like its own vignette. Like,
truly, yeah.
You could take it as its own mini little film. Like, talking about the large Marge scene, if you had asked me before we rewatched it, I would have told you that scene was like 10, 15 minutes of the entire
really?
film. Like, it wasn't until I went, because that scene is so big and it's and so impactful that I forgot it was only like a 2-minute scene at best. Like, it's a very quick scene.
So I'll ask you, is that your favorite scene then?
It's the most memorable scene.
So what is your favorite scene from?
Well, I can sit there and it's one of those things we can sit there and talk about them all, right? Like, so kind of two that I also love. But before I get there, I got to ask you, though, this is my big question to you.
What's up?
He's driving on a lot. If you could only see one film out of all of the ones that he's making, are you going to see the Nun TV show, the Beach Party movie, the Santa Christmas movie, the Twisted Sister music video, the Godzilla film, or the Tarzan movie? You can only pick one. Which movie within a movie do you want to see? Were you buying your ticket to in 1986 when it came out in that summer? Which was also the summer you were born.
Yes. I would say, well, I'm always going to lean towards a Christmas movie. Although I got weirdly like giddy when I was like, oh my God, that's Dee Snider. What's up with that? Like, because I really definitely reacted to that, but the Christmas movie, obviously.
It kind of had the feel, though, that Christmas movie kind of looked like it was going to be everyone's holiday favorite Scrooge moment where the night the reindeer died. Like, it had a moment.
Lee Majors.
Yeah. But the two scenes also that I want to talk about with it are the other most iconic scene in the movie, the dance scene.
Oh.
He's at the bar.
So phenomenal.
With Satan's helpers.
Yes.
Which I just love. And which, did you know I did not realize that the female biker is Elvira.
Yes.
I had no idea.
I did actually know that.
See, this is a little research and look what happens. No, I had no idea. But that dance scene, I for the longest time thought Tequila was the Pee Wee Herman song. Like,
did you really?
I did. I thought that song was made for that movie and for that character because it became so iconic. My whole dance moves all come from Pee Wee Herman.
So here's the thing. I was like not going to do you like that, but you truly do that dance. Like, whenever we're at, like, a festive gathering and there is dancing to be had, that is the dance you do.
So one Christmas, just get me some white platform shoes.
They can go really nicely with the purple snakeskin ones. Like,
and then I can get on the... but that scene...
It's so great.
That's the... Next to the large Marge, to me, that's got to be the most iconic scene of that entire movie. So that one, and I just love when they throw him down and they're all trying to figure out what they're going to do to him, and he just goes under his voice. He's just like... I say let him go! It just audibly still makes me laugh out loud.
Well, because you saying that, what I love is essentially, like, what I love about the trajectory of the movie and how it was written is essentially, like, take this character who, you know, is so rich, so, like, well-developed in his, like, as we've been saying, like, this kind of childlike state, but just plop him into every, like, film trope you can think of. Like the biker gang that turns okay with him, and then, like, kind of the horror of the large Marge sequence, and this, like, kind of adventure of him trying to get the bike, and just see how this character would react in these different movie genres. And it's, like, such a smart thing. And so, like, when you have that, like, great scene where he's dancing, it's, like... To me, it, like, harkened back to, like, great kind of solo dance sequences and, like, your large spectacle musicals.
There is one of the main iconic dance scenes of all time.
Yeah, because it's great. It's hilarious and it plays and it's also, like, fun at the same time. It's not just, like, funny to watch, but it's also, like, super entertaining to watch him do that.
And I don't care. That sound comes on, I'm envisioning Peewee, and I want to start doing the dance. I also, really quick, I love when he loses Mickey and he's in the dark and they have the cartoon eyes for a while and then he turns it on and they have just these, like, terrible, like, stuffed animals there that are supposed to be terrifying. It's just a cool scene. But the other one is props to the Alamo, because as a kid, what I learned about the Alamo came from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And I can still to this day will do the stars at night are big and bright.
Deep in the heart of Texas. I lived in Texas. They do that.
And just the fact of going, I couldn't as a kid
can
understand,
you remember anything?
Why is it so funny that the Alamo doesn't have a basement?
Yeah. It is a really great sequence. And that's the thing is, like, even when you talk about this, it's like all of the sequences they do, they feel like their own, like, tiny, like, little films, like, within those, like, shorts that were released over time. And that is, like, such a great thing to be able to do as a filmmaker, to be able to, like, set someone on, like, an adventure story and give every little sequence enough time to breathe that it's really developed, but you're not lingering so long there that it loses its charm. Like, that Alamo sequence has to be, like, this amount of time, or else it becomes, like, belabored.
No, yeah, exactly.
You know, and then it's just a very smart decision.
But they're also stark differences from each other.
Oh, completely.
And I love that there's such a little bit of a scariness to it. Like, you know, the large Marge, the clowns with the dream sequence.
Oh, I hate those clowns. I was not happy during the clown sequences.
So, all right. I mean, we can sit here and gush about the movie all day.
Yes. Apparently. And listen, I know we say that about a lot of movies, and I think always it's, once you start talking about a movie, especially something like this that's, like, so iconic, it's just scene after scene. And I would venture to guess we'll probably, like, stop recording and go, oh, we should have talked about that scene. Should have talked about that scene. And that is a testament to the movie, for sure.
Yes, agreed, completely. But I think you had some questions for me.
Yes. So my questions are this, and... Do you think this would get made today?
By Tim Burton.
All right, Tim Burton's off the table.
My initial answer actually is no. Because I think this character can come across as, I hate to say it, like, almost obnoxious at times. I don't know if you put this character today with somebody that hasn't seen it. That's why I was so curious with you, having not seen it as a kid, would it still play the same way? So my initial thought would be no, somebody that sees this type of character now without any history of it, without the nostalgia of the time period, I don't know if it plays the same way with our same sensibilities, with our same life. But then as I more think about it, I'm like, but there is a space for these types of characters. I mean, Sacha Baron Cohen's doing it all the time. Like,
yeah, for sure.
You know, so and I know they're not exactly apples to apples comparison, but I do think that there are these very specific type of characters that are going to hit a niche audience. I mean, the fact that there was just a Netflix movie about Peewee, a year or two ago, another About His Big Holiday, I think it was called.
Yeah.
Shows that there's still an audience for it. So, no, my initial reaction would be no, but the more I think about it, you just never know what's going to hit. It's so good. We're talking about it now, 35 years later. And, actually even longer than that if you talk about when it was created.
Yeah, of course.
So I guess, it could be. But nobody else but Paul Reubens can do Peewee.
No, exactly. And I think you giving, such a fantastic history of, that character and how it came to be perhaps speaks to why it can't be done. Because something like that has to really develop over time and be workshopped for it to work, because it can be something, as you point out, that's annoying and obnoxious. But if it's the right actor doing it and the right amount of time spent really developing and nurturing that character's development, then something like that can work. So another question. What is your favorite Rube Goldberg machine of all time?
Oh, it's funny you bring that up, because you have probably the two most notable in film history that came out a month apart. Doc Brown's dog food machine.
Oh my goodness!
Came out in July of 1985, and then you have Tim Burton's Pee-wee's Big Adventure breakfast machine. So, those are the two, and then maybe throw in Mousetrap.
Fantastic. All right, not that I'm saying we would, and not that I'm saying anyone should, but if you were recasting this movie today, how would you recast Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
Well, this is what I'm going to do.
Oh, no.
I'm going to get David Gordon Green to direct, and we're going to make PW's Big Adventure. We're not remaking Pee-wee's Big Adventure. We're making the movie within the movie.
Fantastic.
So PW's Big Adventure is going to be a serious take on it, just like they did in the movie. And if you're going to do that, there's only one person I can play PW.
Who?
Josh Brolin. James Brolin, his dad, plays him in the movie. So now you got Josh Brolin playing him in this. And you're going to play it as the suave, spy-like guy. So then what you got to do is you got to play everybody. As, you got Jennifer Aniston playing Dottie.
Oh, I love it.
You got Marissa Tomei playing Simone, which we barely talked about. I don't think we talked about at all today.
Literally did not. Oh, my gosh.
You got Kathy Bates playing Large Marge. And then, the only people I can think of for Mickey, you got Bill Hader, I think would be great, playing as this ex-criminal that he comes across. And then, and I see Francis as this, annoying tech kid, tech young guy that, wants to steal this red, bike that he knows has got, all of these documents in it. That's Ben Schwartz, right? You got this, Facebook type.
I have literally hit myself in the head with my notebook as he's doing this.
But I'm telling you, that's what I want to see.
Can I tell you?
Somebody needs to go out there and just make this movie. If nothing else, do it as a fun, YouTube 20-minute special. Yeah.
All right, see, I was going to say it needs to be an hour. But, a special, because I'm just imagining, Thanos on the bike, really longing for it. I actually really love your casting. I love this idea. Because you're right. At the heart of it, no one else can be Peewee. And that's what makes that character so great, because no one else can be Peewee.
Absolutely not.
And it's really important and special when you can have moments in film or in television where someone's work in it is so iconic that it can't be redone, because then that thing always just gets to be special and original.
I'm so happy you said the word original, because that is what makes it so special. It was this original character that was produced by a labor of love and has been honed over the years that made it so unique and special, to the point where a kid at 6 years old could watch that movie and, 30 some years later still love it, or an adult who sees it 35 years after it was created and love it just as much. It just has lasted. It was unique, and that's what the mark that it's made, and that's why no one can ever touch this character and should ever touch this character. And that's why I'm so happy we did this film to put it out today, because in this very weird, uncertain time and has the potential to get a lot stranger in the upcoming days, we can all look to Peewee and think about how he looks at the world with this joy, with this happiness, with this fun. So when the weight of the world gets a little too heavy, get out your giant toothbrush, put on tequila, and dance in your living room, and make sure you have some Mr. T cereal.
Well said. If you're not already, please follow us on Instagram at How Could You Podcast, on Twitter at How Could You Pod. You can send emails to us at howcouldyoupodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the podcast.
And if you haven't seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure, how could you not have seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure? Until next time, tell them Large Marge sent you, and enjoy the Odyssey.